The situation in the southern part of the Donetsk front is difficult for the Ukrainian Armed Forces. It was here that the Russian army advanced the farthest in June and captured the most territory. Recently, there was a breakthrough to the village of Shevchenko, and the villages of Yalta and Perebudova were captured. All this became the reason for panicky statements that the Ukrainian Armed Forces front allegedly collapsed. Military expert Yan Matveyev explained in his blog why such statements do not correspond to reality. We've heard something like this about 10 times in the last couple of years, and then suddenly it turned out that everything was more or less okay with the front, and the rapid advance of the Russian army ended with an unexpected stabilization. That's how it is in Sumy Oblast. Indeed, in early June, Russian troops actively crossed the border and immediately occupied a significant area. But then they ran into the defense of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, and over the last 3 weeks since June the 9th, Putin's units have not advanced a single kilometer. On the contrary, the Ukrainian Armed Forces counterattacked and liberated Andreevka, he added. Experts say that in some areas, the Russian army forced to retreat. In war, there are different indicators by which a particular target is important or not. For example, logistical value. Remember, in the fall of 2022, the Russian army controlled Kherson and a huge territory on the right bank of the Dnieper, and then something happened. The destruction of just one bridge forced the entire Kherson group to urgently retreat across the river. The bridge turned out to be more valuable and important for the military than an entire regional center. When assessing the situation at the front, it is important to see the big picture, and here it is. The Novopavlovsk direction is secondary, unlike Pokrovsk, Konstantinovsk and Sumsk, because even in the distant future, the Russian army has no significant goals here. He added, cities, roads, bridges, other objects, by capturing which it would be possible to seriously change the situation in its favor. What is happening in other directions? In Sumy, the Ukrainian Armed Forces have stopped the Russian offensive. To the east of Pokrovsk, the maximum advance in one area in the village of Koptevo in June was 6 kilometers. In order to reach the outskirts of Pokrovsk and threaten the city from the east, another 17 to 18 kilometers must be covered. And that is, if they manage to cross the Kazany Torets River and overcome the Ukrainian defenses. In the Konstantinovsky direction, the movement from the south is only about 3 kilometers in less than a month of June. For example, Russian troops were already in the village of Romanovka on June the 1st. Today, the front line still runs through the village of Romanovka. Here, the advance is generally 0 kilometers in a month, and it is from Romanovka that one of the convenient roads of Konstantinovka goes. It is even more curious to look at the northern part of the Toretsk salient. There, Russian troops have been trying to capture the city of Chasov Yar for a year and a month, but they have not been able to. They have been stuck there for all this time and are not moving either towards Konstantinovka or towards Kramatorsk. But of course, the Russian military is attacking in many areas, and little by little, a kilometer or two per month, they are capturing at least something somewhere, just to draw an excellent report about how many square kilometers have come under their control, the expert said. Today, the Air Force fleet of Ukraine consists of Western-style aircraft, F-16 and Mirage, as well as Soviet aircraft, MiG-29, Su-27, Su-24 and Su-25. This was stated on air by the head of the Communications Department of the Air Force of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Yuri Ignat, on Radio NV. The enemy is suffering painful blows from the work of Ukrainian pilots, F-16 and Mirage. They have become very effective means of anti-aircraft combat. We see how their targeting and navigation system very effectively destroys both the Shaheds and enemy missiles. Each type of missile that a fighter has under its wings has its own target. Plus, the pilots use aircraft cannons, for which the F-16 aircraft was not designed at all to destroy the Shaheds, Ignat said. He added that Ukrainian pilots use these guns when the AIM-9 missiles under the wing run out. At the same time, he added that no one in Ukraine is writing off Soviet aviation, which regularly undergoes restoration work, so that they can continue to work to destroy the enemy using the French Hammer, American GBU-39, GBU-62, and other air attack weapons. Let's call them all by one word: cabs. The same cabs that Russia launches at us. The same cabs, only Western-made. Extremely effective, accurate. They fly where they need to, Ignat added. So, F-16, Mirage and Sukhoi aircrafts destroy Russian positions along the front. Earlier, Ignat said that for effective work, Ukraine needs an aircraft fleet that will have about 200 aircraft of different types. He also said that in the early 90s, Ukraine had 1,000 flying and non-flying aircraft units. In the 90s and early 2000s, something rotted. Something was sold to Africa and other countries. Therefore, efficiency today is not determined by quantity, but by modernization and innovation, Ignat said. He argues that the intensity of Russia's strikes on Ukraine will depend on whether Russia receives support from other countries. This is also important. We understand which countries. We expect effective sanctions from our partners. No matter how much they try to block Western technologies for Russia, we find Western elements in their weapons. Russians produce weapons thanks to profits from the sale of oil, gas and other fossil resources. This is what Western sanctions should be aimed at.